Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Public Safety and Transportation Committee. This is a regularly scheduled meeting. And at the start of the meeting, I am joined by Vice Chair of the Committee, Councillor Downs, Councillor Greenberg from Ward 1, Councillor Bixby from Ward 6, Councillor Wright from Ward 3, Councillor Lucas from Ward 2. And that is all I see from the I see Councillor Oliver joining right now, who's not a member of the committee, but joining. And Councillor Malachy from Ward 3, also not a member of the committee, but joining. Just people are rapidly joining, so I'm just looking one more second. Okay, I don't see any additional councillors. We are joined by a number of members of the mayor's administrative team. I am expecting for docket item 31-25, Andrew Lee, Assistant City Solicitor, Ned Codd, our Director of the Transportation Division, David Kozis, our Transportation Coordinator. And for 19-25, Director Barney Heath of the Planning and Development Department, Zachary Lamel, Long Range Planner, Nora Masler, Planning Associate, and Jennifer Kyra, Deputy Director. So we're going to go right to our first item, which is 31-25, requesting a discussion and possible amendment to the Traffic Council regulations to allow for an appeal on field trials. This is Councilors Lucas, Malachy, Oliver Wright, Mickley, Block, Lubovitz, Farrell, and Getz, requesting a discussion and possible amendment to the Traffic Council regulations to allow for an appeal on field trials. And we have the proposed language drafted in our packets attached. I also just saw that we were joined by Councillor Farrell from Ward 8, also not a member of the committee, but joining. Are there any other councillors who have joined that I missed while I was introducing the agenda?
Not that I saw.
Okay. Councillor Oliver, did you have a question?
I was literally saying, hey, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I introduced
Maybe
you.
you got me and I just didn't hear it.
Yes, I did.
Fabulous.
Okay. So we are gonna go straight to our first item, as I said, 31-25. Councillor Lucas, I know you were the lead docketer on this particular item. I don't know if you want to introduce it first and then turn it over to Attorney Lee. If Attorney Lee, if you're here, if you could raise your hand or wave, because I don't see you.
I do not see him.
Okay. Well, Councillor Lucas, why don't you start us off and introduce this? Do we have Mr. Kosis here?
No, just Mr. Codd.
Mr. Codd, where are you? There you are. Okay, hello.
Hello.
Hi. Okay. Councillor Lucas, to you, why don't you go over it, go over the language as it was, the proposed changes. And then Mr. Codd, why don't we go to you for a second if you want to add anything, and hopefully we'll have been joined by Attorney Lee and Mr. Kozis in that time. I also see we've now been joined by Councillor Block. Go ahead, Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. And if you want, I can play the role of City Attorney Andrew Lee if you want.
Do you have your bar card to hold up to the camera?
I left it at work. But thank you. So yes, I think hopefully everyone has reviewed the docket. The language for the Traffic Council regulations. So I was inspired to work on this amendment when I first heard the Newton Center Plaza pilot, which I know we will discuss later. I won't talk about it right now, but when I first heard about that and I was told that it was a field trial and it wasn't subject to an appeal. So I said to myself, okay, well, I think field trials should be subject to an appeal, not necessarily automatically appealed. So I worked with David Kozis and Andrew Lee on the language that's in our backup. And basically what it is field trials, if this is approved, field trials would be subject to an appeal. And only city councilors are eligible to file an appeal on a field trial. I wanted to narrow the scope for the appeal on field trials. And what we came up with is only a city councilor from the ward in which the field trial takes place in, or 3 city councilors can file the appeal. The other thing that is in there is normally for an appeal, there is a 20-day period to file the appeal. After speaking with David Kosis, I came up with only 7 days for an appeal on a field trial. That is because I know probably 99.9% of all field trials are not controversial, and I didn't want to do the 20-day period to delay a field trial any longer than what it needed to be. So I came up with 1 week, 7 days for the field trial, and that information is in our backup in the agenda. And after speaking with, I think it was Andrew Lee, he reminded me of the city charter, which says that any ordinance change or any ordinance, if approved, there is a 20-day waiting period for it. So I just want to be very clear on this. If the earliest this could be approved by the full city council is at our next full city council meeting on March 3rd, and it would sit with City Clerk Carol Moore for 20 days until March 23rd, and that is when the new ordinance would go into effect. So I just want to point that out. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. And back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Why don't I first recognize Mr. Cod, if you want to add anything at this time, and then I will open it up to counselors. So Mr. Cod, go ahead, please.
Sure. And, you know, I would say I don't really have all that much to add. We prepared, you know, principally David Kosis, who's, of course, the longtime traffic council chair, and we in the transportation division prepared the memo that we shared, you know, kind of relaying our, you know, practice and rationale for the way, you know, the need for field trials, the need for some flexibility. You know, we often want to implement these things with, you know, with some urgency and also with some you know, sort of flexibility to try some different things out. Again, it's you know, as Councilor Lucas noted, it you know, for the most part, you know, these field trials in the past have you know, tended not to be controversial items, and you know, it is helpful, I think, for our operations to be able to have sort of, you know, that to be able to move with that kind of speed and flexibility. But you know, ultimately, it is you know, kind of in the you know, city ordinances and you know, governing the traffic council, subject to you know, the city council process.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Delaney, have we been joined by either Attorney Lee or David Kosis at this point?
No. just Counselor Block.
Okay. And welcome, Counselor Block. I think I recognized you before, but just in case I didn't, make sure I cover that. I don't, since we don't have Attorney Lee and Mr. Kozis, I think it would be good to give them a few extra minutes to join. I think we have a lot of other people who want to comment. So I see that we have two counselors' hands up, which is totally fine. I'll recognize you guys in a second. I just want to take the pulse of the attendees. Are there attendees from the public present tonight who wish to comment publicly on this item? If so, if you could raise your hand right now, that would be helpful. I'm just trying to get a sense. I imagine most people are more interested in our second item rather than this item. I'd like to be able to have comment if we can, as long as we can manage it in a timely fashion. Okay, so I see 3 hands. I think that's perfectly manageable. 4 hands. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take comments and questions from counselors first. When we have heard from folks on the council who want to speak, I'm going to take public comment. I will ask everybody to please keep their comments to 2 minutes. And I intend to use an audible timer. So when it goes off, I'm gonna politely ask folks to stop speaking. I'd rather do that than personally interrupt you, because I hate having to do that. But in order to keep the meeting moving in a timely way, I think timing is important. So to the council, I have Councilors Greenberg and Block. Counselor Downs, I saw and Counselor Downs. Okay. Greenberg, Counselor Greenberg, go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I had a question for Councilor Lucas. Once the trial is appealed, it gets sent to the city council for a vote. Is that correct?
Sorry, I did not explain the appeal process. The appeal process is that it comes to PS&T, and then like any other docket item, we make a recommendation to the full council.
So, I'm sorry. Is
Go
that
on.
it? So, what could happen is by the time it gets through PS&T and then to the next city council, and then perhaps even chartered, it could be a good amount of time before a trial is either denied or approved. So the 7 days that you proposed to file an appeal could actually drag out for more than a month or more. It'd have to go through PS&T, it'd have to go through city council, it could be chartered. So offhand, I think your proposal, unfortunately, I think it would encumber any trials for the city and not allow the transportation department to be flexible. Thank you, Chair.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I just want to point out that only city councilors can file an appeal. I've been on the city council for 4 years. During those 4 years, I've served the entire time on this committee, and only one time has a city councilor filed an appeal on anything, and that was Councilor Malachy, and that was for a bike lane on Columbia Road, I believe, off of Needham Street in Ward 8. And the only reason why she filed the appeal is because the person who was most affected by it is blind. That is the only time that has ever happened in the last 4 years. So it is highly unlikely that it would be chartered or anything like that. But yes, that is the normal process. Just wanted to make sure you know that. Thank you.
Thanks. Counselor Block, then Counselor Downs.
Thank you, Chair. I'm having some technical difficulties, which explains the absence of the video, but you can hear me all right?
We can.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave my wonderful picture up there. I guess this question is perhaps directed at Counselor Lucas. Am I correct that this item is of interest to you because of the next item that's on our agenda, the proposal regarding Newton Center parking area and the field trial that is proposed for that project? Is that sort of what drew you to this issue, or have there been other, I guess, examples of when this practice that we have of no appeal for trials sort of came onto your radar screen and you thought, gee, maybe we should do something about this?
Councilor Block, it was the proposed Newton Center Plaza pilot that
Mhm.
inspired me to work on this amendment to the Traffic Council. That is the sole reason.
Okay, well, I kind of assumed that, and that doesn't detract from your proposal. I just wanted to kind of know sort of its origins. And I guess I would ask Mr. Codd's help in advising this committee as to how we can balance our desire to be involved in significant field trials and also our desire not to micromanage your job or anybody's job and to get in the way of what you need to do. So please think about that. I think it's very unfortunate that this Newton Center field trial has evolved in the way that it has, and I appreciate, Councilor Lucas, your response to it. So that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Downs.
Thank you. I wanted to get a little more specific. I know Councilor Greenberg started down this path, but I'd like to get a sense from our clerk about how long an appeal after the 20 days are over, how long it takes for that to actually get through City Council on average.
You're asking me that question?
I
Okay.
am through the chair.
Oh, okay. It would go to PS&T after an appeal in about like a month time because the same people are notified as the original item. So we allow 2 weeks, notification to them.
Right.
It goes on the
And
docket. It would be like approximately a month.
approximately a month before it goes to PS&T.
Correct.
And then after that, it takes 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks before it gets to City Council.
Correct.
And then there's 20 days to appeal that.
Correct.
I just want to give an idea of just how much time we're talking about. Our previous trials have all been, and I'm going to direct this question to Mr. Codd or Mr. Kozis if he's on, but our previous trials, in my recollection, and I've been on council for 8 years, 7 years, almost 8 years, have been one time, have been funded from the general fund, and have been really just saying along these streets we may remove parking, add parking, change lanes, close sidewalks or whatever. Am I right?
The often field trials are associated with major projects like say, for example, we've got a couple of school reconstructions that are coming up. Sometimes the field trial will be for the construction phase and sometimes it will be for sort of the new, planned traffic and parking regulations, but that are, it's sort of a large package of things that, and in some cases that we would like to be able to kind of, test some things out to flexibly, trial different things and sort of see how these tests work.
Right. And if you weren't able to do that, or you
Mhm.
weren't able to do that very quickly,
Mhm.
what does that do to, say, a school construction schedule? What does that do to your ability to try out new things?
Well, I would say that it would negatively, we think negatively affect, like, say, the using a school as an example, it could negatively affect construction operations. It could negatively affect the school operations. It could really negatively affect surrounding residents. If we think, oh, this parking regulation change in order to deal with this construction impact is going to work out well, but then it turns out that it's really not working out well, and then it ends up being, a month and a half before we can actually implement something.
Yeah. I'm also thinking we did some trials around COVID, around the schools, and we used trials also, I believe, for testing out the employee parking program in Newton Center. And only once we felt it was fairly solid, we knew that those spaces would be used and they wouldn't interfere with customer parking, that we finalized it. Is that correct?
Yes,
Right.
exactly. And I think those spaces were tweaked and moved and adjusted a little bit over the course of what ended up being, over a year of trial period.
And I think Councillor Lucas is right. These are mostly non-controversial. And the council does have review process because we do oversee where, funding is eventually spent in most cases. So my feeling is this is a one-time experiment, not permanent. In fact, I'm told it ends in November, and it's funded by ARPA funds, which, due to a fluke of the way that federal bill was passed, is not reviewed by city council, but is controlled by the mayor. So I wonder if we are not, in this case, creating a law for a single application, when what we really want to do is say we want a little more say on the Newton Center pilot. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lucas, I saw you wanted to respond, and then Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Real quick, I just want to correct Councillor Downs. The waiting period for the appeal is 7 days, not 20 days.
That's true, but after we pass anything, there's a 20-day appeal period.
Yes,
Of the full council.
that is not changing. There is no change to the normal anything else that can be appealed. It's the only thing that I'm adding is the field trial.
You're shortening the 20-day appeal for the traffic council trial, which normally would be 20 days. But after council passes something, there's a 20-day period.
Councilor Downs, I would appreciate it if you didn't interrupt me. Thank you. The appeal period for the field trials is 7 days. The normal appeal period for any other measure that the traffic council adopts is 20 days. There is no change to that. That is still the same. The only change is field trials are now subject to an appeal. That is 7 days.
I understand that. I noticed that Andrew Lee is on. Councilor Grossman, I wonder if I can ask him a question?
Sure, let me
Sure.
just let Counselor Oliver be recognized first, and then I was going to actually recognize Attorney Lee, see if he wanted to
Great.
add anything, and then do a round of questions for
Super.
Attorney Lee.
Thank you.
And members of the public, thank you for hanging in there. I know you want to speak and you're being very patient. Thank you. Counselor Oliver.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. I will try and be pretty quick here. I agree in principle with the comments that Councilor Downs just shared. I also signed on to this item because by the simple fact that it's being limited to city councilors, having this ability to, appeal a pilot decision or a decision to create a pilot, it makes sense to me because that is how sometimes, rarely, the public has an opportunity, for example, tonight, to sound off in a way that they can be heard, publicly. I think that is important. I think that there are definitely times when that process happens as a regular course of designing and approving a pilot. And I would be hard pressed to imagine that a group or, an individual city councilor would then turn around and appeal it and go against what I'm going to call the grain for now. So to a certain degree, yes, I believe Councilor Downs is correct. This idea or this kind of ability to create or appeal a pilot does make sense. I think it would be used, pun intended, I guess, judiciously. But it does seem to me that it is an important way to ensure that in the rare case, for example, this particular project or this pilot, to ensure that if there is indeed a significant level of public concern that is raised, and I think that it's fair to say that is the case this time, this makes sense to me. It just makes sense. No one's going to start, no counselors are going to start saying, oh, I want to appeal every single opportunity to figure out the best way to orchestrate traffic around a school project. I don't think that's a really good example of how this would be used, which is why I signed on to it. Hopefully we have an opportunity, or I have an opportunity to support this in full council. I think this is a smart measure and represents our residents well. Thank you.
Counselor Malky.
Thanks. Didn't realize I'd be called out of order. Yeah, I would agree with what Councilor Oliver just said, and I think it's, really stretching to worry that enacting this and allowing a councilor appeal would be used to somehow slow down fixing a problem at a school construction site, for example. Nobody's going to want to slow down fixing a problem. I think here we're trying to slow down creating a problem. So big difference. Thanks.
Hey, Attorney Lee, if you're available, I'd love to recognize you for a moment, ask if there's anything about the ordinance or the work that you did. And by the way, thank you for turning that work around in such a timely and very rapid fashion. And if you want to comment at all, and then I know at least one counselor has a question for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't planning to attend tonight, but the Director of Planning and Development let me know that I was being missed, so I decided to hop on.
Thank you.
But the reason I wasn't planning to attend is there really are no legal issues. It's, Council Lucas asked if the City Council can do this and asked me to make the edits to achieve kind of at least the amendment he was proposing. I did that. So there's really nothing more for me to add from a legal perspective, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Counselor Downs, I know you had a question, so let me recognize you. Other counselors on, if you have questions for Attorney Lee, this would be the ideal time to ask them. Then we'll go to the public. Counselor Downs.
Thank you. So if we pass this, Counselor Lee, and we have a trial and it's appealed and it goes through PSNT and then to the full council for a vote, is there not then a delay after that vote to allow for mayoral veto or an appeal of that?
So I understand what you're saying, Councilor Downs. You're referencing the provision of the charter that requires 20 days before any measure, which is defined broadly, it's a resolution, act, ordinance amendment, whatever it might be, decision of the city council,
Right.
20 days before it becomes effective. So yes, that 20 days would have to elapse before the final determination of the city council that the appeal is, for example, denied, is effective.
Excellent. So that was my point about the additional 20 days added to the legislative process on top of the 7-day appeal of a traffic council trial decision. Thank you.
Okay, any other counselor questions for Attorney Lee? Okay, I don't see any hands, so I'm going to take public comment. We have 3 hands raised. The order that I have is Jeremy Freudberg, Mike Halley, and Stan Kugel. If I will call on you each, I'm going to hit my 2-minute timer. Like I said, I'm going to make it audible so everybody knows when 2 minutes is up. And if you could please each state your name and your address up front in your comments, that would be helpful. Okay, Mr. Freudberg, I'm just preparing my timer here. Mr. Freudberg. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, good evening, everyone. Jeremy Freudberg, 102 Clark Street in Newton Center. Also former member of Traffic Council. I want to thank Councilor Lucas for bringing forward this proposal, and also to thank Councilor Oliver, who said everything that I want to say much better than I can. So I'll be brief with my own remarks. I'd say that this is a very tame proposal insofar as only city councilors can appeal any trial. I don't think it's going to have a really, you're not going to see much change at all through this. It's a very modest change to the process. And as far as any negative consequences, as far as immediate safety concerns, my understanding as a former member of Traffic Council is that the police still do have the emergency power to really implement any change to traffic and parking regulations on an emergency basis. So again, it's pretty modest change overall, and I would support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Halley.
Hi there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, counselors. So my name is Mike Halley, 62 Cherry Place in West Newton, and I'm the chair of the Transportation Advisory Group. So we have seen between that and my membership in the Complete Streets Working Group, several of these trials come through. And in fact, they are in general non-controversial, but I think one of the issues is they can be seen in different lenses. Like one of the trials that I believe has happened is no turn on red status at particular intersections that are as the direct result of a safety concern. And I think that is a case where I have heard maybe some counselors who have raised that as a question. And I think that is a case where possibly the police could use their emergency jurisdiction. I don't think we want to push that to be used more often, but I think there are definitely cases where this is required with expedience. And I go to Councilor Downs's comments. It seems that we're trying to address a problem which is from this specific issue, the next item up, and which I think everyone would agree has not rolled out as well as we would have wanted, even on the city side. And I think we're still in the middle of the process of that. So I think I would consider seeing how this process works with everyone with their best intentions as the actual public process happens before we come up with a mechanism to do this override just to address it. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, right on the nose. Stan Kugel.
Hi, I apologize. I was really intending to comment on the second item.
Okay, no problem. Happy to recognize you then. Okay, so back to counselors. Do we have further comments, discussion, or a motion on this item? Counselor Bixby.
Thank you. Hopefully, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And my apologies for being off camera. I was visiting my elderly grandmother with my kids over February break, and I'm in transit at the moment, which is appropriate for our committee. So I have a couple things, I guess, after I just wanted to hear the public comment first. And just picking up on the most recent public commenter, if I can address a question to Councilor Lucas.
Sure.
Okay, I guess that you know, picking up on the question of these seem to be a little bit backwards perhaps tonight in tonight's agenda, and that, you know, we're going to be hearing next what you know, where the public process has gone with this item. Do you feel like this public process has played out in a way that would address this, or, you know, that modifications are being made, that you know, there is responsiveness, you know, or you know, adjustments and change happening, or do you still think that this kind of, you know, potential for a blanket veto is necessary? Items.
Counselor Lucas.
I'll answer, but Counselor Bixby, the last part of your comments, I was unable to hear. Can you just
Oh,
repeat?
I'm sorry. So, just given that we, you know, we will be hearing next about, you know, what if there are changes that are being made and how the public process is going. You know, and I'll just, you know, my biggest concern with this item is that it is sort of addressing a one-time thing, which, you know, I totally understand the reasons for wanting this, you know, given that it feels like, you know, something's been kind of put in this trial format, you know, in this way that there hasn't been public process on. And so, you know, I understood the impetus from it, you know, but picking up on Mr. Halley's public, you know, comment, the public process is playing out even as we're addressing this item. And so I was wondering if you thought that, you know, given where we are tonight, which we'll hear next, unfortunately, would you feel like you still would have put this item forward? Can you hear that? And does that make sense?
Yes. So I understand what's going on with the Plaza pilot. And yes, it is next. So I, you know, would love to hear from planning on what changes have been made and what inspired those changes. But I still think this is a good amendment to the Traffic Council regulations. It allows for an extra set of eyes, or 24 of them, an extra set of eyes on controversial trials. Let's just put it like that. With respect to projects around schools and those particular field trials, I don't see that happening. And Councilor Bixby, I don't know if you heard my opening comments because I think you came late, so I'll just repeat it again. I've been on this committee for 4 years. Only one time has a counselor filed an appeal on a permanent change in Traffic Council, and that was because the individual who was affected is blind, and that was done by Counselor Maliki. I hope I answered your questions, and let me know if I didn't.
Counselor Bixby.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I do worry in some of these other items. You know, I understand the assertion that it hasn't happened before, but in part that was because it hasn't been an option for, you know, some of these items where changes are happening around schools that do need to happen. I know I'm this is a challenging one for sure, but I'm glad we're having this conversation. Thank you.
Counselor Block, then Counselor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. I look at this situation as it may be unprecedented, but I worry that just because this is an unusual situation that not only Councilor Lucas but many city councilors are responding to, this could foreshadow similar situations in the future. I don't think we should sort of cross it off because you know what the mayor's done and ARPA and all the rest is very unusual. I also put in the context of sort of norms around governance. I think there's been a lot of discussion at the federal level that norms are being broken or ignored or tested in ways that have never been done before. I worry that this is a little bit our own local version of that, and that worries me. And I don't think it is out of bounds for us to take steps to make sure that the norms that everybody has followed, perhaps for quite some time, continue to be followed, and that field trials should be non-controversial. They should be sort of the micromanaging of circumstances to try and make things work as well as possible. And it's just very unfortunate that we don't feel that that's the case right now in this particular field trial, that maybe this shouldn't qualify as a field trial. This shouldn't be called a field trial. It should be called something else that would be covered by the normal appeal process. And I understand all the points about how long it could take for an appeal to play itself out and to finally come to some resolution. Again, I put that on the scale of there are norms that we've all been following, mayors, city councilors, and now this seems to be testing those. So in that sense, I think it's appropriate for us to do something, but I also think it's appropriate for us to avoid the threat or the theoretical possibility of micromanaging something that really shouldn't be part of our province. It's somebody else's job to figure out. So that's just how I'm thinking about this now. So that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Counselor Oliver, then Counselor Lucas.
Great, thank you again, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. What's really interesting to me in this conversation, which by the way is, I'll echo our president from last night. This is a thoughtful conversation. I'm learning a lot here. And I appreciate that. I think ultimately, I haven't heard any comments from city councilors or the public that I disagree with, at least in spirit. What I think should prevail is the thought that what we are indeed talking about here is a process that would only be used, and I would argue should only be used in unusual circumstances where perhaps a step was missed, or there are members of the public who don't feel like they had a chance to comment or missed it, or just literally weren't listened to, weren't heard. And I think that really, we are talking about the, not emergency in the sense that, we want to like step on the toes of NPD or, in terms of what has to get done for safety reasons. That's a true emergency. What I'm talking about here are exceptions to, perhaps what I would consider, and I assume this is what Councilor Block was talking about, what we would call kind of the normal process, where there is a public conversation about a project, especially one that, is as significant as the one we're about to discuss next. I don't think it's right for there not to be a mechanism for city council and therefore the public, right? The city council as their representatives. Sorry for the the overly prescriptive civics lesson right there, but that's what is causing this item to come up, is the fact that that step didn't happen before a pilot was pronounced as a go. And that's what this, I think, at least in my head, is all about. Again, looking forward to being able to support this at full city council. I think this is a reasonable measure. I don't see the city council using this in unreasonable ways, like we've heard as a few examples here. But yeah, there you have it. I'd move it, but I can't. Thank you.
Councillor Lucas, then Greenberg.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to briefly repeat what Councillor Maliki said, and I think I'm going to get it right, is that it won't, if this passes and is adopted, this won't create problems. It will prevent future ones. And I can only assume if this amendment was on the books previously a couple months ago, I can only assume we would probably not see a Newton Center Plaza pilot as it was originally proposed. I know it's changed and we're going to hear it later on tonight. With that being said, Chair, I move for approval. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. We have 3 additional councillors' hands up. If that brings us to a conclusion of council comment, I'm going to share my own opinions at that point, and then we'll see if there are any further comments before we take a vote. Councillor Greenberg, then Bixby.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Several of my colleagues have stated that this new appeal process would only be used in unusual circumstances. There's nothing in this amendment that states that that's how it will be used. There's no guarantee that the current city council or any future councilor would use this appeal process in a usual circumstance. So I just can't.
Councillor Greenberg, I don't know if you can hear me, but you're frozen on the screen. I'm happy to come back to you. Councillor Bixby. Oh, are you back? Okay, Councillor Greenberg, you froze for a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. My last statement was I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bixby.
Hopefully you all can hear me again. I just had 2 additional questions. The first was, I guess, for Mr. Codd or others. I read your memo, but more explicitly, are there examples where this sort of month plus 20 days is what it sounds like we're talking about for a timeline? Do you have concrete examples where that would pose a significant barrier or obstacle to some of the important things we're talking about here that are the kind of true functions and design of this trial thing, like the school or safety improvements or other items like that?
Well, I would say this, to the degree that the appeal process were exercised, that would could impinge on our ability to deal with impacts of as I was saying before, unforeseen impacts from things that we're trying out, that we don't we don't necessarily know exactly what some of the effects are going to be, and you know, the trial process enables us to be to react, you know, quickly, and you know, address you know, kind of operational and convenience impacts, you know, and to the point that you know, that was made earlier, that you know, the police can still, you know, kind of step in with immediate sort of safety interventions and traffic and parking regulations. You know, I don't do not intend in any way to speak for the police, but I do know that they take that, you know, very specific public safety carve out very seriously in making those kind of immediate and unilateral changes.
But so, I mean, you know, for example, the schools we're like, you know, they'll be looking at the new schools that'll be opening. I mean, those kind of things are happening months and months in advance, right? Are there any specific examples that come to mind right now of items where this, you know, just shy of 2 month potential delay would really cause a burden?
Well, so it's not so much the delay from, you know, when we start planning and come up with our, you know, our preliminary plan for how to deal with the school construction, that kind of thing. Again, using that as a, you know, kind of a good representative example. It's when the you know, the trial starts, if, you know, if we need to make changes, you know, whether that, you know, those changes could be appealed.
Got it. Thank you. And then I appreciate the answers. I guess this might be for Mr. Lee, and apologies since we were asking you questions earlier, but sort of channeling Mr. Kozis, who often in traffic council, you know, says there are moments where things, you know, we can put things in place, and if it really, really isn't working, something then can be changed later. What is the process if we see this, you know, a change like this, you know, being put in place and it's really not working, for changing it back?
Attorney Lee, are you able to answer that? I don't think Attorney Lee is available to answer that right now.
I could answer on how trials
Yeah.
work now.
Sure. Go ahead, Counselor Downs.
Is that, you know, once a trial is in, where it's not even before traffic council, but it's DPW, police, school officials, whoever else is involved, look at the situation, I think, weekly, and change things. And when a counselor finds an issue, we pick up the phone. I mean, I think that's the point of a trial, is that we hear from our constituents. And already when we have trials, we you know, we hear from the public, the mayor hears from the public, and things are changed while it's ongoing. And that's why it's a trial. So that, you know, we can adjust stuff as it goes along.
Thanks. And that's really helpful information. I guess what I meant more was if this change is put in the ordinance, and we see that, you know, it's causing a lot of impediments and other barriers, do we then have to do this all again where we change it just like this?
Yes, I think.
Got it.
If anybody disagrees with me, you can speak up, but I think it would be an ordinance change back, you know, just like this process to change the ordinance that we're going through right now.
Thanks.
Sure. Counselor Block.
I'm hearing a number of the members of this committee very concerned about what I think is a theoretical maximum amount of time that it would take for a field trial appeal to work its way to resolution. And and so I'm wondering if there is a compromise here that just I don't know how easy it would be for us to change our rules, but suppose the appeal process could take place the way Councilor Lucas proposes, but if it didn't gather a majority vote in our committee, that it would end at that point, and that only if it gained a majority vote would it then report to the city council for consideration in the normal manner. If we were able to develop a process like that, then the 7 days, well, it'd be 7 days plus whatever time it would take for us to meet, which we could always meet on an emergency basis. I don't think this would happen very often. I mean, once a year would be unusual. And I think it would be worth trying to take some step that indicates that we want to follow some norms here, and we're concerned that they're being tested in a way that we're uncomfortable with, and we want to do something about it. I'm wondering, Councilor Lucas, whether there's a friendly amendment, and whether this is even, is it just our rules, or is it our charter which has decisions in committee go to full city council? I guess that's maybe a legal question. Maybe anybody who knows the answer to that. If it's our rules, then it's in our power just to adopt a rule like that. Any thoughts? Anybody?
So first of all, Attorney Lee, are you available? Okay. Attorney, did you hear Councilor Block's question? I don't know if you could unmute a second.
Yeah,
If
I did hear the question. And then Council Block, the question I don't think was fully fleshed out. I mean, could the city council designate another committee or commission as a review body for this particular matter? Yes, it really doesn't have anything to do with the rules. So I guess, is that an answer to your question?
It sounds like that would be a way of limiting the amount of time that an appeal could linger. If, for example, if you're telling us that the city council could adopt an ordinance that would designate this committee as the decision-making body regarding an appeal, and that if something gathered a majority vote, then the appeal was upheld, or if it didn't, the appeal was denied, then it's 7 days plus our meeting, and then there isn't the chartering and all the other elongated delays that people have mentioned in this discussion. I wanna tighten that so that that's at least much less of a concern, much less likely, even in the extreme.
I appreciate the explanation. I just want to say that with what I said, I think that there probably is not an issue, but I haven't thought about it thoroughly, and I would appreciate the opportunity to take it under advisement and actually draft something and think about it a little bit more comprehensively and make sure it is truly not a problem. If the committee chose to proceed in that fashion.
I appreciate this. This is an unexpected, request, and maybe in in the spirit of I guess I would love to hold this item and hear what Mr. Lee has to say to us regarding ways in which we could limit the amount of time that an appeal could linger, and at the same time allow for an appeal process of a field trial in the way that Councilor Lucas is trying to implement. So, but I realize there's a motion on the floor, so and I defer to whatever the procedures are for handling this, but that would be my preference. And maybe if there would be a straw poll of the committee to see whether people would be willing to hold it to achieve that, or if people just want to get this over with, maybe Councilor Lucas would withdraw his motion and we could hold it and have a further discussion next time. That's just my own request. Thank you, Chair. I'm done.
Okay, let me check in with Counselor Lucas, and then we have a hand from Counselor Bixby. Counselor Lucas, go ahead.
You're asking me would I withdraw my motion to approve and accept Counselor Block's motion to hold? Is that what you're asking me?
Well, I think Counselor Block asked you that. I'm just merely
Okay,
giving you
well.
the opportunity to reply or add any commentary to his suggestions.
I would disagree with my friend and colleague from Ward 4. I would not want to hold. I would go for approval.
And are you interested in further amendments along the lines of Counselor Block's suggestion?
A friendly amendment? Yeah, I'm always open to a friendly amendment. What Counselor Block was suggesting is potentially writing something completely new in the traffic council regulations. That's what I understand. It might be friendly in nature, but it is certainly complex. And I think if I heard from Attorney Lee is that he would need a lot of time to work on that with Counselor Block and perhaps myself. So, yeah.
Right. I think such a suggestion would also involve coordination with our council president and our clerk's office, because I think it would be very much precedent setting for other situations and all of our other subcommittees, which is one of my personal reasons that I'm not in love with the suggestion, though I find it very creative. I appreciate the thoughtfulness, Counselor Block, of looking for compromise. I think such a suggestion has much further reaching implications than we're potentially thinking about right now. That's my own opinion. Counselor Bixby?
I was just gonna also say that holding or giving this a little bit of time might be helpful in my mind, recognizing that there is a motion on the floor. But just, this has been decoupled from the reason that I think it was first proposed, and perhaps might be best reviewed as such. And so, given that there's lots of other contracts, but I recognize that Councilor Lucas has said you might not want to do that. So I do think that perhaps giving it a little bit of time might be helpful.
Okay. Counselor Block?
Well, I assume we'll take a vote on Counselor Lucas's motion. Assuming that fails, I would like to move to hold to allow our legal department to advise us. I appreciate Councilor Grossman that this could be precedent setting and it could be complicated, and I could be persuaded that we just shouldn't do it for those reasons. But I'd like to give this a chance. I think it's important enough to deserve that. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thanks. Before I comment on the item, Ms. Delaney and Attorney Lee, if Counselor Lucas's motion fails, that's the end of this item, right? There's no holding after that. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, so if it fails, it goes to the full council with a recommendation against the item. And then there's an opportunity at full council to put it on second call and handle it however you'd like. Make a motion to recommit, amend it, whatever. There's a whole host of options at that point, but the motion before us is approval or denial of the item itself.
Yes.
Okay, so just to add my own comments, I'm going to support this item. My view of this is that traffic council is intended to be a body that supports and does some work on behalf of the council. And on traffic council itself, we obviously have a member of the council, and Councillor Downs has served in that role very admirably over pretty much the entirety of the time I think that I've been on the council, or pretty close to it. And then we have a few appointees, and we have some members of the administration. And essentially, in my mind, and I think this is the history of the origin of traffic council, and I think about the Financial Audit Advisory Committee a similar way. These bodies were created because we in committee historically were spending very large amounts of time taking up seemingly smaller items, but I don't think it was intended to kind of skip over the council process. And while I do recognize that it's a one-off event that inspired Councillor Lucas and others to docket this, much of our legislation, if not most of it, arises from a single experience or a series of experiences that make us recognize that we've missed the boat on something or could improve. And that's how I see this. I also believe with our very strong mayoral form of government that something like this will have the effect of encouraging our mayor, as well as those team members who work with our mayor, to collaborate more with the council early on. And that's not just about this particular item. I'm just saying in general that I think it essentially ensures collaboration earlier. And with examples for that were raised, such as school projects, any school project from the time it's announced until the time it's implemented, we're talking about at least a 6 to 7 year time horizon. So there is ample time. The conversations about how the traffic is going to work and what parking needs to be changed, in my experience from the Lincoln Elliott Working Group, I mean, those were happening right away, many, 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 many years in advance. And granted, things may change, but I have full faith in Commissioner Morse and the many collaborating team members of the administration who come and participate and pour a lot of time and effort into those projects to be well on top of it and able to craft whatever trials are needed with ample time to go through this process. So I honestly am not very worried about the delay. Maybe it will be used a lot. That's okay with me. And I think that if collaboration is close and there's a lot of consensus, it won't be needed very often, but where there's not, having a measure in place to, encourage the check and balance type of discussion is a good thing. So I'm going to vote in favor. Any other comments or questions before we take a vote? Okay, I don't see any. For all the members of the public who are watching, this vote only takes place within the Public Safety and Transportation Committee, of which there are 8 members. We have a number of members of the council tonight who are not on the committee. So I believe we have 7 present, 1 absent. Ms. Delaney, if we could, I'm going to ask everybody to use their virtual hands to vote so I can count clearly, because it's hard for me to see everybody at once. Last opportunity. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Counselor Lucas's motion, please raise your virtual hand.
God.
Okay, I see 1, 2, 3, 4 members of the committee in favor. Okay, if we could put those virtual hands down.
I don't know why my hand isn't going up, but please count me as in favor of this motion,
Okay.
Chair.
5 in favor. And let me put my own hand down. Okay. Those opposed, if you could raise your virtual hand, please. 2 opposed. Hands down. Any abstentions? Okay, we have 7 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 absent.
No, yeah,
That-
5 in
No,
favor.
no, no, no,
Oh,
no.
excuse
5
me.
in-
Sorry. 7 total.
5 to 2.
Favor. I apologize. 5 in favor, 2 opposed, 1 absent. That was approved, and it will go to the full council for further discussion if anybody places it on second call at our next regularly scheduled council meeting. Thank you to Mr. Cott and Mr. Lee for attending and answering the questions. Of course, Mr. Cott, I think you may be hanging around for the next item. Mr. Lee, I think you probably aren't, so thank you both. We're going to go on to 19-25, a discussion regarding the proposed plaza at Newton Center. This is Councilors Farrell, Maliki, Lucas, and Mickley requesting a discussion regarding the proposed temporary carving out of 51 parking spaces in the Langley parking lot to install a trial public plaza. Discussion to include planning for possible long-term community space, coordination of the plan with local businesses on customer sales, and the appropriateness of using ARPA funding for a short-term experimental purpose. I introduced early on from the administration who we're expecting tonight. You've all met Mr. Cott already. I believe we're also joined by Barney Heath, Director of Planning and Development, Zachary Lamel, Long Range Planner, Nora Masler, Planning Associate, and Jennifer Kyra, Deputy Director. Just to give everyone an overview of what I'm expecting, I'm going to turn this over to Director Heath and any members of his team in the administration to review what the proposal is and changes it's gone through in recent weeks. Then we will have questions and comments by councilors, and then I will take public comment. At that time, public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person, and as I did in our first item, I'm going to use an audible timer, and when the timer goes off, I would ask anyone speaking to please cease their comments at that point. So, Mr. Heath, if I could turn it over to you, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just Zach and myself here tonight for the planning department, although DPW and Parks have also been involved. I'm here. I want to be brief with my comments tonight because I know there's a lot of interest and a lot of people to be heard from. We're here tonight to present a very substantial modification to the original plan. It's been informed by lots of conversations that we've had with many folks, many emails that we've received, all of which we've tried to incorporate into this modification that you'll see tonight. Zach will present it, but I'll give you kind of the bottom line right at the top, which is originally we were thinking about displacing 52 spaces overall from the Triangle parking lot and Langley Road. We're down to a net displacement of 8 spaces in the triangle that Zach will take you through the logic there. The other 2 pieces of this is now a 5-month trial. Originally, we were thinking it would be a years-long trial, but we're now looking at this through the end of October. And the last thing is that this is part of a much larger effort to direct some investment to Newton Center that includes repaving of the parking lot, complete repaving of the parking lot, lighting improvements, some minor landscaping improvements, and some badly needed accessibility improvements. So it is part and parcel of a larger piece of things. So I think I will turn things over to Zach to take a very brief presentation, then be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barney. And I want to acknowledge Ned from DPW, Luis from Parks. We've been working really closely with all of our different partners on this and are really excited to share it with you. I'm going to share my screen. I will try and be as brief as possible, but I know given the previous conversation, given all the conversations that we have had, I just want to make sure that all the information is shared clearly and everyone is on the same page. We're going to go, or I will go over the overview of the project, which I think Barney gave a good summary of. I want to speak obviously about the plaza, the goals, the site, the design and programming, then go into the proposal to add additional spaces. So I think Barney mentioned this project is about creating a new public space, a temporary public space in the heart of Newton Center that at the same time adds more parking than currently exists, and then dive into the outreach that we've been doing and what we plan to do in the future, what has always been planned to do as we move forward with this. Really what this project and what projects like this, which are happening in our neighboring communities, which are happening across the country and across the world, are really to try and test out ideas. We want to, if we're going to not succeed, we want to not succeed fast and correct that. If we are going to succeed, we want to succeed fast and we want to make that better. And so what we are thinking about here is taking a piece of the Triangle lot, the Langley Road municipal parking lot that Barney mentioned, and allow it to become a place that reinforces Newton Center as the community, the cultural and retail destination that it is. Barney mentioned kind of linking this to a larger repaving and accessibility project. We want to make sure that wayfinding, safety, and visibility is improved, and that is regardless of how you get to and move around the village center, right? If you're getting there by car, bike, walking, or public transit. We want to bring new people into Newton Center that are going to frequent the local businesses, obviously the incredible business community that exists there. And just in general, build off of what makes Newton Center great. I think we all know where we are and what we're talking about. We're talking about the Langley Road. I'll refer to it as the Triangle lot, really in the heart of Newton Center. And as Barney mentioned, this is what was shared. And I think as Mike Halley mentioned, the release and the rollout of this could have been much improved. So lessons learned there. This was what we were putting forward. Not to say that it doesn't have merit. I think we wouldn't have proposed it otherwise, but we were looking at creating a 16,000 square foot temporary plaza adjacent to the Newton Center Green, looking to create better connection between the existing green and the War Memorial across Langley Road, which was covering 52 parking spaces. And then we were looking to add around the periphery an additional 60 plus parking spaces. Again, if you hadn't heard about this, just forget you ever saw this. What we are looking at right now and what we are planning to do, as Barney mentioned, is look at the southwest corner of the Langley Road Triangle for this public plaza, again, adjacent to the green. And as Barney mentioned, we've been able to find and create a situation where there are only 8 lost spaces from the triangle itself. And again, overall, we are creating even more parking. We are creating over 60 additional spaces that currently don't exist in Newton Center. But just to hone in and zoom in quickly on the triangle here, the plaza, roughly 7,000 square feet, covers 24 parking spaces. We're not losing 24, like I said, we're losing 8. That's because there are not publicly available spaces in the triangle right now that we plan to make public as part of this pilot. There's employee parking, 12 spaces, just as close to in purple there. Those would be redistributed out elsewhere. There are 2 Zipcar spaces that obviously aren't available to the public, and there's 2 blue bike. There's blue bike stations taking 2 parking spaces, which would be moved into the plaza itself, and again, returned and reverted back to public parking. This is where we are right now. This is where we were. This is where we are. The site, I imagine many of you are familiar with it, but just to give a sense of how we landed on this site, one is there are a lot of large trees on that southern edge. Those are going to be great for shading and creating interest, obviously adjacent to the green, so that they both kind of enhance and improve the other. We can improve the access kind of to and from this space, particularly across Beacon Street, to get to all the different businesses that are on Union Street. And then finally, this is the highest point of the triangle. So if we are able to create a plaza here, if we are able to create architectural interest and things like that, it will be visible and be seen from various vantage points across the village center. A question we've received from many people who are on this call, conversations we've had with many businesses and residents, and obviously councilors, is why not just look at the green? Why not just improve the green? And in our minds, it's not an either or situation. It really is a yes and. But when you get down to it, there are concerns and issues, and I hope we can speak to other staff members who are on it, who are on the call to talk about this more if questions come up. But there are real concerns, right? There are accessibility concerns. Getting across grass with a walker or a wheelchair or strollers, if you have young kids, is not necessarily accessible. There's also an intensity of use. We want to be bringing a lot of people here. We want to be bringing events here. If that happens on grass, it gets worn down, it gets muddy, it gets wet. It's a maintenance issue. Also, there's kind of design considerations. We're working with a design consultant. We're really excited about that. When it comes to adaptability and flexibility, if we're able to use a paved flat surface, we can move things around, we can change things. It gives us just the maximum ability to create the best possible space. The green is well used, it's well loved. There are trees scattered about. There's pathways already cutting through, so we're just a bit more limited if we were to go down that road. And then similarly with the constructability standpoint, we want to create shade structures, we want to create lighting, we want to create, again, artwork and things of visual interest. To do that on a flat paved surface is a lot easier, a lot simpler. And again, that's not to say we don't want to enhance the green and have spillover. That's of course part of this project. So that's what I mean when really it is a yes and we think both of these things will be made significantly better by being next to each other. When it comes to the program, when it comes to the design, we're looking at a toolkit. We're currently in the process of planning additional outreach and public comment. But I think what we want to create here is a variety of interests to bring in as many people as possible. So there's an opportunity for all of this various components, and I'll go into each one of them right now. So when it comes to active recreation, we really believe this is a space for the businesses to kind of be in, make themselves prominent and take advantage of it, as well as obviously the space itself, bringing people to those doors. But we can bring in games and fun and play. There's educational opportunities, story time, movies, group exercise. There's seasonal activities that we can talk about as well. Obviously in the summer, this could be a very hot space, so bringing in water to cool people down, keeping people covered. Passive recreation, so seating, artwork, again, various events to bring people in. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. These are all the different things we're trying to explore. As I mentioned, seasonal adaptation. We were looking originally, as Barney mentioned, at a year-long pilot, looking again at the summer and the fall, though we still need to deal with a whole host of different elements. We need to keep people cool. We need to keep people protected. We can do that through plantings. We can do that through shade structures. We can do we can do that through water as well. And then finally, what we're referring to as infrastructure and attraction. It's about making sure people are safe. We want clear lighting, so that this is a space that becomes used and loved at night. We want to improve wayfinding. We want to make sure that if you come by car, that you know where the various parking spaces that exist in Newton Center today, and obviously the ones we are creating, are. We want to make sure that people are protected. This will be within a active parking space, so we need to make sure that's done well and designed well. And then again, bringing in artwork that is, one, just fun and playful, but also could be used as wayfinding to and from and around the village center. Focusing in specifically when it comes to the businesses, we think kind of within the toolkit, there's a toolkit, and it's about attracting, guiding, and entertaining. And what we mean by that is we think there's an opportunity here to use artwork, to use installations, to bring in new and less frequent visitors. If you've ever been to Philadelphia, I imagine you might have gone to Love Park. These are the things that bring people in. These are the experiences that, again, just build upon the amazing retail environment that is Newton Center. Guiding. So this is about getting people around. Newton Center is a good size, which is great. There's Union Street, there's business on Langley Road Center, there's little nooks and crannies of businesses as well. So making sure there's signage, making sure beyond signage, we could think of maybe playful artwork that can move people around, get you out of your cars. And if you're there for a 10 or 15-minute thing just to pick something up, you wander around and find other shops and things to do. And again, entertaining. This is where I think what I mentioned before, where we could see businesses kind of going into the space themselves to use. We know there are things going on that the businesses are doing in their own stores, but hopefully there's an opportunity to expand their footprint through this, where a book reading could happen, where a wine tasting could happen. And then in addition to bringing in other events, crafts fairs, farmers markets, etc., that just, again, bring more people in and then get them to the local businesses. As I mentioned, we're working with the design consultant. These are conceptual diagrams, and we still need to bring them to the public and move them through the public process that we've laid out to build this up. But thinking about this space in 3 different ways: quiet zones, active zones, and a place for performance or spectacle. What that looks like, or what that could look like, again, just conceptually, it uses the kind of edge of the green for seating and food, outdoor dining. We can create displays of artwork around the edges, have opportunities for games and activities for kids, families, etc. And then, like I mentioned, a space for performance as well. And obviously, when not in use, just a space to see and be seen. So now I'm going to go into the parking component. And as I mentioned, we are creating more parking through this plaza program than exists today. But before going into those specific proposals, I want to talk about parking utilization as it exists now. So before going into how parking is used, I did want to step back and just look at the universe of public parking that exists in Newton Center. What this map is showing is that there's over 1,200 public parking spaces right now in Newton Center. The map is basically showing everything that's within a quarter mile kind of the center. Obviously, certain parking spaces are closer to certain streets depending on where you are. The Langley lot, it represents 152 spaces of those 1,200 total spaces. And that's just to say is that there is a significant amount of parking available right now in Newton Center. It's not the most obvious. It's not the most, it could be better. It can be made clearer, which is something we want to do about this, but just to say that there is a lot of parking within Newton Center right now. There's also been a lot of studies and past work that's been done looking at how parking is used and how it can be improved in Newton Center. Those date back to 2013, and we are looking at parking counts and doing those right now, which we'll get into. If you look at those reports, if you look at those studies going back from 2013 to 2017 to looking during COVID to now, you essentially find the same things happening over and over and over again. And what that is that the most visible spaces, obviously the most convenient parking spaces, get full at certain times of day, particularly lunch. However, or I guess before I get into it, however, when those spots are full, when the triangle is full or Union Street is full, it gives the perception that there is no parking available throughout Newton Center. However, there is always parking available in Newton Center. It can be free parking, it can be long-term parking, 2-hour, 3-hour parking. It just may be a little bit further away. But it is pretty much guaranteed, which I know is very convenient and what people are looking for as well. And that's what the data shows us. So I'm going to run through these incredibly quickly. I know this will be posted later to be looking at. But what we did was we looked at the 2017 Newton Center parking strategy, which hired a consultant, did parking studies, parking counts for the entire universe of Newton Center. We looked just at the municipal lots. So we looked at Langley, Pelham, Pleasant, and Cypress. And we said, okay, if we come in morning, afternoon, and evening, what's going on? The bars on the bar charts to the left, 2017, shows what was going on at the Langley lot and what was going in all those 3 other lots. In the morning, there's always parking available. When we went out, there's always parking available. I think it's a bit of an anomaly that ours is a lot lower than this, I will say. It was colder, but again, there is always parking available. This was in afternoon, so I mentioned lunchtime is really that peak time that the parking is being used. Essentially, the Langley lot is full. The other lots are mostly full, but again, there are spaces available. In the evening, again, the Langley lot gets filled up. In our instance, the Wednesday evening we went, it wasn't very full. But again, all the other lots are very much available. And so what that tells us is we need to do a better job of making sure it's easy to find and people know where it is. The same trends over the weekend morning, weekend afternoon, weekend evening. And then we went out last Friday, Valentine's Day, just to see. We figured, okay, Valentine's Day, people are going to be out and about. They're going to be going to lunch. They're going to be going to dinner. They're going to be buying last minute flowers. Here's what we saw. We don't have 2017 data for Valentine's Day, so we're just looking at 2025. This was the morning, comparable to what we saw, on a typical weekday or a typical weekend. It was full at lunch, to be expected. Again, the Langley lot, but there are still spaces available in Pleasant, Pelham, and Cypress, and the same thing in the evening. So I know that was a lot. It'll all be posted later. And now I just want to go into the specific redistribution proposals, because I mentioned before there's 60+ spaces that we plan to create and make available as part of the pilot program. These are scattered throughout. They are all, for the most part, within a 1, 2, 3 minute walk to the core, Center, Langley, Beacon, Union Street of the village center. Some are a little bit further, but again, the vast majority are again 1, 2, 3 minute walk away, and in many cases closer to businesses, depending on where you want to go. I'm just going to go through a couple examples. These are all posted online on the project website, but I just want to give a couple examples of what we're talking about. We are talking and why we think these are obviously pilot moves. We're not talking about, digging up roads, moving curbs. This is about paint. This is about signage. These really are what we think are short-term fixes that can make a really big difference. So this is Lyman Street right now, just north of the Triangle lot. There's 8 spaces on the south side of the street. What we can do is we can make Lyman Street a one-way. We can move the parking from the south side to the north side, and we go from 8 spaces to 22 spaces. That's because there's no curb cuts on the north side of the street, so there's a major efficiency improvement here. And I'll just back up and say all of these have been worked on with our partners at DPW. We've shown these to police. We've shown them to fire. So making sure that these aren't they aren't making any fire truck unable to maneuver or get where it needs to go. Again, they've all been aware and are looking at this, every single one of these. I want to go to Pelham and Pleasant Street as another one of our proposals. So right now, Pleasant Street to the north of this, or to the top of this map, has 2-hour parking allowed on the south side of the street, except for the portion that's closest to the village center. Excuse me. And Pelham Street has resident-only parking on the north side. This is the only street within the entirety of the village center that has the resident-only permit restriction. Pretty much every other residential street has 2-hour parking on one or both sides of the street. Our recommendation is to, on Pleasant Street, that short area where there is no parking allowed, to allow it just as it is further west. We gain 4 spaces there. And then on Pelham Street, where there is that resident-only restriction, to allow for public parking to exist. The resident permit is maintained. It's just 2-hour or 3-hour parking, whatever is decided, except by residential permit. And when we did a little bit of research, so there's 21 spaces for Pelham Street. The current permits that are issued right now for Pelham Street, there's 14 permits that have been issued. Those are 4 residential permits and 10 guest permits. So the 21 spaces that we're adding, the amount of space needed to create them is already there, but there's only 14 permits. So, if there is space available right now, there are not enough permits that have been issued to kind of take up all the space that exists, just to say that it's not being utilized. Okay, those were 2 examples I gave. There's a lot more. Now just going into outreach, things that we've done and things that we are planning to do. And this will be the end, I promise. So like I said, we're working really closely with a variety of city departments. We have engaged with a significant number of the community organizations that exist. We've been connecting with other boards and commissions, Commission on Disability. As one example, we've been meeting with a variety of local businesses, either through email, through phone calls, through going multiple times to visit them. We held an information session this morning for the businesses that reached out. We followed up with a presentation for those who couldn't attend. We have an email set up. We've been getting emails from a variety of, again, those businesses, residents, etc. We sent out noticing to the Traffic Council and those who are impacted by these changes, and then all the other different ways that we kind of connect and link with the general public. There's a project website. We announce this through the mayor's newsletter. We have constant contact. And again, I will be the first to admit that the rollout was poor and should have been improved. But we've done a lot. We're doing more, and we're trying to make up for it. Ahead for this, we're meeting with you right now. We have Traffic Council next week. We're looking for an open house visioning workshop. So thinking about the design, what this space could be, what it could be programmed for the week of March 10th. We're hoping to set up in Newton Center and hoping to leave that up for a couple days so that people can come to an event, and then people, just general passerbys, can give us feedback as well. And then we'll have a kind of revised design feedback session where we can present a kind of fully drafted proposal for public comment, and then all of these other ways that we will plan to stay in touch and move this along. Also, how do we achieve success? What does success mean? For these types of pilots, these temporary things, we need to evaluate. So we're looking at doing that throughout the process, throughout the project. We look at user surveys, obviously linking up with local businesses. We do additional parking utilization counts, and obviously exploring other ways as well. And those will all be used to kind of determine success. As a pilot, we can change. We can go, if something isn't working, if Pelham Street, the parking doesn't work out, we can change it, right? We can remove that right away. That's the beauty of a pilot. That's the beauty of it being temporary. And the timeline, I think, as Barney mentioned, just moving us, we're hoping to launch this this summer. We're hoping to follow right on the heels of the repaving and accessibility improvements that DPW will be doing, hopefully in April. We really also hope to bring out the community, right? We want the community to be a part of the construction process. So a lot of these types of things, the elements rely on volunteers. I think we'll be able to do a little mixture of both. So we want to make sure that the community feels, again, like this is their space, not only when it comes to the design, but hopefully we can all get our hands dirty as well. Thank you. That was a lot. I spoke quick, but I know a lot of people want to talk, and I will stop sharing my screen and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Lamel. I found that presentation to be really informative, thoughtful, and thorough. I know that there are various mixed feelings that I'm sure we'll hear tonight about the project overall, but I just really want to thank you. That presentation was excellent. First, I want to go to members of the council who have comments or questions. And I don't know if there are any other members of the administrative team who, want to comment at all before we go to the public. After we get through that portion of the discussion, we'll take public comment in the order that hands have gone up, 2 minutes per speaker. So let me first just look to see which members of the council's hands are up first, and please bear with me because councilors and members of the public are mixed together. Sometimes it takes me a second to sort through everybody, but if you leave your hands up, I will find you and get to you. I have Councilor Wright, followed by Councilor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question on page 8 in the presentation that showed the modifications to the parking lot. I don't know if Mr. Lamel can pull that up. I was wondering how cars are going to turn around, or if there's a space so that they can back in, or are they going to have to back up on some of the parking? Can you pull up page 8?
I can. I'm going to pull it up. So essentially, the cars will be able to. They'll be turning radius or turning kind of. Maybe I can turn to Ned on the specific engineering term for the space that allows cars to do the 3-point turn.
if all this, they go down there and all the spaces are full, right above the yellow there. So if they go down there and all the spaces are full, so they're going to need to back up to get out of there. Right above the yellow. Yeah.
I understand what you're talking about. I mean that lane is, I think, at least 24 feet wide. So I think they would be able to make a turnaround. It might be multiple points. But again, I might defer that to the traffic engineer.
Yeah, so if it's all right with you, Chair. Yes, and this is clearly a very high level schematic diagram that we would work with planning to ensure that when the parking and the plaza are laid out, all of the spaces are accessible and can be reasonably entered and exited. If that requires kind of a small sort of like striped out buffer zone to make sure that sort of the design vehicle has space to make the turn in and out, as Zach says, it's a reasonably wide aisle there, but we have with the new layout, with just having the kind of half of that last row reserved for the plaza, we haven't done sort of the turning movement analysis, but we would do that and make sure that the maneuvering is comfortable.
Okay, because I have a minivan and I couldn't see if everything's parked there doing a turnaround. Okay, my next question, and are you going to provide turning radiuses when you do that?
We can show those, yes.
Okay, and are there any employee parking left in the lot, or have they all been moved?
The recommendation is to move them out of the lot.
So move them all out. And where would they go?
It's not been decided yet, but they would be distributed throughout throughout the village center. One option is that we're exploring is to put some on Lyman Street where we are changing the parking, and then some potentially on Brayland at Langley.
Okay. So in your diagrams, you show a quiet area next to the active area. I don't understand how the quiet area would be quiet if you have an active area with a bunch of screaming toddlers.
That's the beauty of designers, right? We can imagine these things. We can use architectural elements. We can use planters. I don't know if our friends at Parks want to weigh in on this. I see Luis raise his hand, but these are all things that'll be part of the process.
Mr. Chris and Maurice, you want to comment on that?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Grossman, and Zach. Great presentation. Yeah, so as Zach mentioned, you know, we would work very closely with their designer to, you know, sort of allocate this space. We also see the sort of active zone as being programmed as well. So as Zach has shown in the presentation, the idea of a bike town, that could be either programmed as much or as little as we all agree with. So there are a lot of potentials to create temporary separation through programming and built features, if you will, to create those quiet zones within a very active area that's surrounding it.
Okay. And then Mr. Lamel, you said the parking doesn't exist and that you're creating this parking, but isn't, except for like Lyman Street, isn't the parking actually is there for the most part? There's one place that there was no parking, that you're allowing parking, and one place that was resident only, but doesn't most of this parking already exist? And you're saying you're creating it. Are you creating it being that most of them are going to be metered?
Great question. I think most of these spaces are not available to the public now. So when I say we're creating these spaces, we are creating new public spaces that are being made available. And in terms of being metered versus unmetered, the non-residential streets are being proposed to be metered. So Lyman, Center, Beacon, but the residential streets would just match and align with the various other residential streets and the regulations. But again, I guess that would be all determined within the pilot through Traffic Council.
Okay. That's it for right now. Thank you.
Councillor Farrell, you're next, and then Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. I got engaged and drafted this docket item probably literally within a minute and a half of receiving an email from a business person who said, "What's going on? No one's talked with us about these changes, this plaza that the city is now proposing." And it reminded me, and didn't remind me because I think about it all the time. I've had a fascination with Newton Center and its potential probably for close to the 30 years that I've lived here. Because of its size, configuration, and centrality, I believe Newton Center has the potential to be a crown jewel of Newton's villages. And I don't mean this, I want to be really clear about this. I don't mean that it is more important than the other villages, but I do believe that with its success and the same type of planning, other villages in Newton would flourish in their own right and character as complementary to what happens in Newton Center. I appreciated the presentation by Mr. Lamel, but it reminds me that what I understand, unfortunately, and may just be my own misinterpretation, but I wanted to know when I heard about this, is there long-term thinking behind this plaza? Or is it just going to be a plaza, and if it works, we'll have another plaza the following years and maybe even make it permanent? In my opinion, we should be looking with open, inclusive, thoughtful, and professional planning, a long-term view at what Newton Center can be. And it needs the participation of all retail people. It needs the participation of all the owners of the buildings that surround the Langley lot. And it requires the imagination, particularly, I know many of you have gone through this long MBTA housing business, but it may take looking at what can Newton Center be like if we worked with owners and retailers to negotiate an architecture around Langley Park, and think of Langley Park as the gemstone in the center. I don't need to go to Philadelphia to look at Love Plaza. I just need to go downtown to Boston and look at Post Office Square, which at one point was a 4-story, absolutely degenerate parking facility. And the businesses and the city got together and said, what would happen in a mutual effort to put these parking spaces underground and build an extraordinarily beautiful park on the top, which in Newton Center, in my opinion, if we were working with building owners and retail people and said, imagine this as a spot where people really wanted to come. And business owners and retailers, we will work with you. We, the city, will work with you to help get this done with some thoughts about what the exterior, what the circumference of this park should look like. I'm talking about probably a 3 to 5 year comprehensive plan. But I just think that Newton Center, to get lost in a plaza that might be expanded in the future, and we worry about parking for people to come to the existing retail that is there, loses the opportunity to be expansive in our thinking about what we want Newton and Newton Center and the other villages to really be like. And that's all a conversation about retail. It's about housing. It's about traffic. It's about parking. It's about nightlife. It's about making it such a success that Newton Highland says, whoa, I can do something like that. And Newtonville says the same thing, and Nonantum says the same thing, as complementary centers around the city. Anyhow, what frustrated me when I heard this and made me sit down and think about this and concretize these thoughts over many years is that I don't want us to get into another piecemeal project when we have the opportunity and the resources. I know this is expensive, what I'm talking about. I know it's expensive. But I think it would just regenerate Newton and bring people who want a lovely place to come and shop and sit and have lunch and have some nightlife and live in really nice housing and be in a transportation center. So I hope I'm not rambling too much, but I appreciate the presentation, but it just concretized for me that this is a limited vision, a very limited vision. And I hope we will say, thank you, but maybe we can use this as a test and really see what happens with some parking issues around the different places, but not look at it as the end all of what we want Newton Center and Langley to be. I apologize if I've gone too far abroad on this, but this really has been in my mind for years. I think there are other people in the city who feel the same way, who don't want us to get lost in this. And I would like to see whatever money is being spent right now on this, perhaps to be perceived as seed money towards a much greater vision of what Newton Center and Newton can be. That's just one boy's thoughts. Thank you very much.
Mr. Lamel, Mr. Heath, would you like a moment to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with anything Councilor Farrell had to say.
The same for me, right? I hope this feeds into the long-term success of Newton Center.
Okay, Councillor Lucas, then Councillor Bixby.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lamel, for the presentation and other city staff that are present and not present who have worked on this in the last 1 to 2 weeks on the revisions. I'll say this, what I've seen tonight is an improvement of the initial plans that we saw a couple of weeks ago. So thank you for working on this. Mr. Lamel, I just want to make sure we have crossed our T's and dotted our I's with respect to the fact that we can't use the 2 Newton Center greens for the plaza. With the help of Councillor Wright earlier today, we were able to figure out the approximate square footage for the 2 greens. It's 43 and 30,000 square feet respectively. And you're saying that you cannot use those 7,000 square feet and that approximately 73,000 square feet?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Mr.
No, sorry, I apologize.
No, it's okay. Just wanted to let you know it was a good time to chime in. Go ahead.
And I'd also be happy if Luis from Parks chimed in after me. I guess I would say it's not that it's not possible, but it isn't recommended, right? And I think we went through those variety of reasons why. I think there's other reasons as well. So I'll leave it at that, and obviously happy to pull up the slides and then turn it over, hopefully through the chair, to Luis from Parks.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Zach. So, a few things to understand about the green or the conglomeration of the 2 greens, if you will. There is a war memorial, site furnishings, mature trees, and lots of lawn. And the lawn area is currently very well used by many users. The issue, when you present new programming and more vendor space potentially on grass, is that these events take a long time to coordinate and they're very hard to cancel last minute for rain. So when we have extreme weather events, the lawn gets damaged and it causes our staff to pivot and focus resources on that when we have a few other more pressing issues to deal with. So like Zach said, it's not that it's not possible, it's just not recommended from a long-term perspective and maintenance of the green, and taking into account the monuments and other features that are in that green.
Okay, thank you for your answers on that one. I have some more questions. You are going to, I guess, change the on-street parking regulations for Dalton Road and Pelham Street. Just wondering, have you heard any feedback from the residents who live on those streets?
We've received emails from residents on Pelham and Pleasant. All those homes have been notified. I don't believe we've heard anything from Dalton, but I can double check.
Okay, all right, thank you. And Mr. Lamel, I just want to stay with you just real quick. In your presentation, you said there was about 1,000 private parking spaces in the village center. You're not counting homes, right? You're counting like parking lots and private driveways in the commercial area, right?
Yes, sorry, I should have been clear. So 1,000 private spaces for the businesses and commercial uses, not any residential private parking. Apologies for that.
Okay, you're not counting the fire station, are you?
No, it's kind of, the parking garage off of Center, the church's parking lots, things like that.
Okay, the spa. Okay, yeah, okay, I think I see what you mean. All right, so you had a slide which showed the how much parking was being used on Valentine's Day, and I think I saw that the other parking lots, not the triangle, had spaces available, and I just wonder if visitors from out of Newton who may not be familiar with the other parking lots, if they are aware of those, and perhaps we will need some, I think, better wayfinding signage to direct them to other parking lots. Is that part of this proposal?
100%. Wayfinding and signage is very much a part of this, and hopefully we can do it in a playful and artistic way as well.
Okay. And I just want to talk about Lyman Street. That's going to be one way, right?
That's the recommendation, correct?
And one way going towards Center Street.
Correct.
Okay. And I guess if I'm coming up Center Street from Newton Corner, normally I can turn left to go down Lyman Street, then I can make an immediate right to go down Newton Center Green. But I think with this proposal, I'll be unable to do so. So if I want to drive down Newton Center Green, which is the one-way street in front of the Brookline Bank and the other bank there, I'll have to go down, I guess I'll have to go past the fire station, turn around onto Lyman, then make a left onto the Newton Center Green roadway. Is that correct?
I believe so. If you're coming down Center, you'd have to make a left on Willow and then make that right, go past the fire station and make the right on Lyman. That's correct.
All right. Recommendation, is it possible to change the one-way street just in that first half block, so you'll be able to make the left onto Lyman Street and then go right on the Newton Center Green, and then it becomes one way on Lyman after the Newton Center Green? Was that ever discussed?
It was. It could be done. You would lose a few spaces that are being added because where that portion where there's two, where you were saying have it two-way to get you to Newton Center Green, you'd have to lose those parking spaces. So it's just a matter of priorities. Add a couple more public spaces or lose a few.
Okay, I got it. So it's possible It could be one way for the whole roadway now, but in 3 months, 4 months, you, in theory, you or someone else could decide we want to take away those 2 parking spaces and make it two-way in that first part, correct?
That's correct, and I guess it could be done from the start if you raise that and other people felt otherwise. I mean, I think that's the, that could be mentioned at traffic council. But I think again, as a pilot, that gives us that flexibility.
Okay, all right, thank you. I appreciate that. The presentation that you displayed this evening was a little different than the one that's on the webpage right now. And I'm just wondering, for transparency, are we going to see both presentations on the Plaza webpage, or are you only going to be one?
All presentations, once they're made, will be put on the website. For anyone who's listening, Councilor Lucas is referring, we met with the business community this morning, and so there was an abridged version particularly tailored to that discussion. Also, we only had an hour.
Okay, thanks. And last question. You listed I think it was in your presentation, the success or failure of this pilot. And maybe it's me, but I didn't see any metrics, meaning parking, traffic, foot traffic, business revenue, anything like that. I mean, is that going to be calculated? Or if it is, I must have missed it.
We're looking at kind of different evaluation techniques, obviously things that are within the budget for a pilot, but I think surveys, talking, working with the businesses to look at those things will be critical. Also, I think we should put on the website that Newton isn't the first to do this. There's a lot of case studies out there where these types of projects have had major benefits. There's also documented case studies where this hasn't gone very well, and hopefully we're incorporating the lessons learned into this. So yes, evaluations, parking counts, things like that we'll be looking at. We'll obviously be working with the business community to talk to them, survey them, bring in their data and things like that, and put that before everybody as this moves forward.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set for my questions. I just want to say I was a co-docketer on this, and I would like to hear more of this once it's implemented. So when ready, Chair, I will move hold on this item. Thank you. And thank you to you, Mr. Lamel, and Director Heath, and others for your work on this. Thank you.
I will consider that a motion to hold. I'm not a fan of motions thereafter. I'd like to sort of just, when somebody makes a motion, keep it. So if you're interested in a motion to hold, Councilor Lucas, that's on the table. You good with that? Okay. Okay, we have Councilor Bixby, then Maliki.
Thank you. I was just wondering how the conversation went this morning and what feedback you received. Thanks.
I think it was a positive conversation, and the follow-up has been positive. I feel like the businesses, I mean, there's still a lot more to do here, right? There's a lot more work that needs to be done, but I think the recommendations, the updates in the plan are coming from direct conversations we've had with the local businesses over the last month, with residents, with community members, with counselors, et cetera.
Yeah, I'll just say I think there was a palpable sense of relief from the businesses that were on the call. So,
Councilor Bixby, anything further?
Thanks. That's it.
Okay. Councilor Maliki, then Greenberg.
Thank you. So I just wanted to clarify something. Did I misunderstand the mayor's original email announcing this, where she said basically that it was going to stay paved because it was a trial, and it sounded, I don't have the exact language here. Basically, it sounded like it was a plan to expand the green, which I took to be that it would be turned into grass if this was permanent, but is that not the case?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mr. Lamel. I was trying not to pipe up necessarily this time.
The proposal before and the proposal now is the paving in the parking lot stays. I think we have an opportunity to again create a kind of plaza space where, and I think hopefully we can incorporate planters and plant material and do some enhancements and tweaks to the green as well that kind of both complement each other. But again, this is temporary, the summer and fall.
All right, and on one of your slides, I saw the word turf, which I fear you mean artificial turf, and I would urge you not to do that. We've got too much of that already. Was that the intention, to make artificial turf on this?
Zach's having trouble. I think that was just an example of what other spaces have been in the past and what they've done. So I don't think we've settled on any particular surfacing at this point. And again, the idea would be whatever is there is temporary. It might be installation for as little as a day, and maybe a little bit longer in some cases.
And
But
Barney,
appreciate the comment. Go ahead, Luis.
may I add to that as well? You know, a big part of the conversation related to this pilot and the fact that it's paved is so that we can program the space without significant maintenance, if you will. We're also thinking about materials and amenity selections that could be, you know, sort of displaced elsewhere if the pilot or when the pilot sort of goes away. So we're really thinking about that post-use life of the materials. So turf is not really something that Parks and Rec would want to see here.
Good. I would like to see that word gone. Second question, in your Mr. Lamel's presentation, so we saw sort of existing and proposed for 2 streets, but where are the maps for the other streets? I'm on the project webpage and I have not been able to find them for the other streets.
If they are not online now, they will be online tomorrow morning. And obviously they will all be shared with Traffic Council. So if they're not online now, my apologies. We just updated the website in advance of this meeting. So again, they're not up now, they'll be up tomorrow morning.
Yeah, because I recall earlier there was sort of one map that I think had plus numbers on it, you know, plus this, plus that on each street, which was not very detailed about where the actual spaces were. And I can see for the 2 streets you provided, there's a lot more detail, but I just don't see the other streets. So it would be good to make that easy to find, because the ones that are up there, they're kind of buried in the presentation. And also, I don't see on the ARPA webpage, on the city website, I don't see the amount for this. What was the original amount of ARPA funds budgeted for the earlier plan, and what would be the amount for this plan? And, you know, could we get some detail what it's being spent on? Not that we have any control, but I'm curious. Thanks.
Yeah, the budget hasn't changed on that, Councilor Maliki. It's $300,000 to include design and construction. And that's going to be paired with the repaving, which I think is 1.1 million.
So 300,000 design and construction, even for this much smaller area.
Yeah, so it's, you know, I know the focus is on this area, but the improvements include lighting, some landscaping pieces, maybe some traffic control improvements as well, accessibility. So there's a lot that's incorporated in that, you know, may not be directly on the plaza itself, but in the, you know, surrounding areas. Go ahead, Zach.
And yeah, but so I would just like to add to that. I think um we will, whatever we do, whatever space we have, we will make the budget work, right? And I think now with this slightly smaller plaza space, we will make that budget work, and we will use the opportunity to create those enhancements and improvements throughout the village center as well. I think something that we've been learning and hearing from the local business community is and I think, as Councilor Farrell mentioned, Newton Center is a good size. So you want to almost spread the wealth in some ways. We want to get people out. We want to get people moving around to all the different areas. And so I think now we have the opportunity to do that with artwork and pieces and elements, signage and wayfinding beyond the footprint of the plaza, maybe in a little bit more creative and polished ways than we couldn't have done with a larger space.
And so how out of date is the ARPA page? Because I assume this would be showing up under economic recovery in village centers.
Yeah, I would say it's probably very out of date and needs to be updated. So that's something we can attend to.
Right, because we're kind of at the point now where, like, I see the somewhere, actually it's on the parks drop down. I saw the Captain John Ryan Park, so it's updated for that. But how much ARPA money is sort of unallocated? Well, with or without this, how much is unallocated at this point? Because we had to sort of know how we were going to spend it generally, I understand, by this past December 31, and then we've got to spend it by this coming December 31. So how much is yet to be sort of committed? Put it that way.
Mr. Heath and Mr. Lamel, answer that if you can, but I would not expect.
Yeah, I can't
I
answer
think
that.
That's a question for Ms. Lemieux, her team.
Okay, so you don't know. Okay. And I think those were my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Greenberg.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I want to thank Councillor Farrell for his comments about Newton Center Village needing to have a long range plan. It's unfortunate currently the heart of our city is a parking lot, an unattractive parking lot. And this trial is the start of a way to bring vibrancy to our village, to that village center. We need to take our focus away from having a space for parked cars and instead creating space for people to enjoy visiting, shopping, and walking around. So I am in full support of this. I actually wish the plaza was larger. And in the past, back in, I believe it was 2010, my husband and I owned a business in Newton Center. And I became involved in, I believe it was called the Newton Center Renaissance. And it was a plan to convert the Langley lot into something that would enhance the village. But it became very contentious. And it just died away. So I am very, very excited about this and in full support. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to comment myself quickly before we go into public comment. Councillor Greenberg, to me, you just nailed it. When I first saw this proposal in its original form, I found it very exciting. And I personally really applaud Mr. Lamel, Mr. Heath, and others who, worked with you in generating the idea. I fully agree with the vision that Councillor Farrell laid out. And that type of thinking was really palpable to me in our last mayoral election when I was listening to then candidate Fuller and candidate Lennon and others. In virtually every debate and conversation, the idea of somehow turning the Langley lot into this beautiful, really attractive, park and area was on everyone's minds. The practicality of it is a much different scenario. And what I particularly applaud about this effort is that you're taking a really small amount of money and trying to create something pretty great and big and creative with a lot of potential out of it, and to use a small amount of money to learn what potential may be with different investments and opportunities. And as you were going over your presentation, I was thinking a lot about the street at Chestnut Hill. I spend a lot of time over there. And, Newton Center, in my opinion, there are strengths and weaknesses to the fact that the ownership of the geography is so split there. And one of the things that the street at Chestnut Hill has been able to do as a sort of a singular owner of a big property is activate it in the way that I think you're trying to do here. And it's really benefited from having a public common to have a lot of different kinds of programming and draw different kinds of people in. And it is so lively and vibrant over there. The wayfinding is excellent. The signage is excellent. And it's really a subpar space that they worked with and sort of created this out of. Newton Center has so much more potential than that. So I think it's great. I underestimated some of the concerns about the loss of parking spaces. I understand it, and I really appreciate all the business owners that have spoken up and shared their concerns about it. I think one of the concerns I mentioned to Mr. Heath and Mr. Lamel when I first heard about this is I totally agree and sort of think similarly with Councilor Greenberg that making a parking lot the center of and heart of our city is not what we want. At the same time, there is a balance to be had. And one of the concerns I always have is I feel like we've shrunk parking spaces so much that from the perspective of a mom with a currently screaming toddler, trying to get kids in and out of car seats when those spaces are so compact is horrible. I'm constantly trying to shove my hands and my fingers around, sharp corners of my car door to keep it from banging into the neighboring car to have enough space just to lift my child out. And obviously we have people of all different ages and stages of life with different needs of getting in and out of cars. And I do think that's a challenge. But that said, overall, I really think, I think this is really interesting and has a lot of potential, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Okay, I don't see any other counselor hands at this point, so I'm going to open it up to the public. I'm going to turn on my timer 2 minutes at a time, and I'm going to take it in the order that participants raise their hand as indicated by the participant window that I'm able to see on my screen. So first I have Stan Kugel, followed by Stephanie Patterson. When you unmute and begin speaking, if you could please state your name and your address for the record. Thank you. Mr. Kugel, go ahead.
Hi, Stan Kugel, 85 Chestnut Hill Road. Thank you for this presentation. And I am in favor of this pilot. I think it's a worthy start and a worthy experiment. I think it's very important that there be some kind of active draw, such as a cafe or food kiosk that people can access without crossing streets. I'd like to see the experiment be a little bit larger, but there are obviously other considerations. I'd also like to mention that the seating should be usable by people of different ages, particularly for older people. The picnic tables that are in the green space are really not useful for older residents. The comment about artificial turf, I think was a good one. That's not a great idea, not a great look, not very comfortable to walk on. And I would oppose the use of artificial turf in this experiment. As far as parking, the availability of parking spaces is not the only issue. It's finding them. The triangle works well for parking because it's easy to see, easy to find the spaces. fringe parking spaces are not so easy to find. If there are 3 on one side and 2 on the other side, and you don't know they're there, not very helpful. Perhaps we could come up with some way to put in electric signage that could direct people to where there are available parking spaces. I'd like to support Mr. Farrell's comments about a long-term plan and vision, and also support the reference to Post Office Square, which I think is one of the most successful reuses of an urban center that I've seen. Thank you very much. It's the end of my comments.
Yeah, thank you very much. Stephanie Patterson, followed by Andrew Popper.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Patterson. I live at 74 Pleasant Street. I just wanted to kind of chime in as someone that will be affected by this parking, and actually currently is. I'm the mom. I have 2 small children. I have a third on the way. Every day, Pleasant Street, the traffic on it is already quite high. I anticipate it's only going to get higher now that people are redirected to a residential street that's effectively being turned into a parking lot. About 20% of traffic in a parking area is due to cruising, which is additional driving to look for a parking space. There's also a higher incidence of traffic accidents, which is a big concern to me as a mom. That fact, I can send resources, but should be non-controversial, as the mayor in her email that she sent last week referenced that there is a higher rate of accidents in these parking lot areas. I see no consideration for the people that live on these streets that are being rezoned as parking lots. There's no increase in pedestrian crosswalks, any safety bumps. There was, just for a little bit of context, some comment about how there's only one street, only Pelham, that is resident permit only. I spoke with some members of our street that have lived here longer than I have. They said that Pleasant Street tried to create a resident only parking zone, which is allowed in our city bylaws, but it was denied because of the location of the school on that street. So I don't think that Pelham is being kind of out of the ordinary. I wish that we could have more restrictions in place. Cars are going too fast. There's no thought to these pedestrians that are crossing to these zones, that are crossing to the school, that are crossing to the parking lot. You know, I'm not necessarily against a village space. We're high utilizers of that space. You can often find us picking up some ginnies and meeting our friends outside in that space. But you also need to think about the people that live here, and the young children that can be affected by this. And I have a whole list of concerns. The exhaust, the traffic, the speeding, and none of that has been addressed. And I
Ms.
think
Patterson, I have to ask you to wrap up. I'm sure you heard the timer.
no, I didn't hear the timer.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'll try to make it louder as we go forward. For additional concerns, certainly write them out, and you can certainly send them to the city council. And actually, Mr. Lamel and Mr. Heath, maybe you can take this moment to say where they can be directed. There will also be a further conversation around a lot of the elements that you raised when this goes before traffic council, and you both, Mr. Heath and Mr. Lamel, perhaps could also reiterate when that meeting is as well.
I was going to suggest that traffic council is next Thursday evening at 6:30. So that would be an excellent forum to, you could either direct your comments to the traffic council in advance of that meeting, or you could testify at that meeting as well.
Particularly around the road and safety.
Yeah, around the road and safety. And again, just to reiterate, this is a pilot program. It's not a permanent change. We want to see how this works. If there are problems, we want to know about it. That can be reversed.
And what's the best email address for further concerns to be listed?
I'm going to let Danielle answer that.
Is that at the same time as the kindergarten information night?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Ms. Delaney, what's the best email address that we can direct people to submit additional?
Sure, you can
comments?
make your comments to Traffic Council at newtonma.gov, and all members of the Traffic Council Committee will receive those comments.
Can you repeat that again? And also the date and time?
Okay,
So-
the meeting is next Thursday night, February 27th, beginning at 6:30 p.m.
Oh yeah, that's exactly at the kindergarten informational night. Okay. And then,
So you can email the traffic council members at trafficcouncil@newtonma.gov.
okay.
Okay, we have Andrew Popper followed by David Cash. Andrew Popper.
Thank you. I am a psychiatrist who lives in Newton Center, works here in Newton Center at 93 Union Street. I was on the business call this morning where the reception was decidedly mixed at best. I subsequently learned that the city had at one point hired Nelson Nygaard Consultants to assess the parking situation and make recommendations. They produced a 152-page report from which Mr. Lamel cherry-picked a few graphs. The number one key finding of that report was, and I quote, on-street parking in the core of Newton Center is functionally full. Their two main recommendations were, one, to use adaptive pricing on parking meters to encourage turnover, and two, to build more parking. Now, almost 10 years later, not only has the city never acted on those recommendations, the city is actively trying to do the opposite and remove parking. I support wholeheartedly Councillor Farrell's vision. I won't repeat some of the comments I made earlier this morning, although I'm happy to do so, but I'm limited for time. So I will just simply wonder, is there a way the city would be amenable to listening to its own consultants instead of doing the opposite?
Is that the conclusion of your comments?
That is the conclusion.
Thank you. We have David Cash followed by Angela. David Cash.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for this meeting. This has been great. I live on 35 Bowen Street, right in Newton Center, and I also rent an office for my consulting firm on Union Street. And I, like many, from what I've heard, particularly Councillor Farrell, and I love his vision, have wondered about the center. When I moved here with my wife 25 years ago, looked at the center, have been to many, many New England greens and commons. It's the only one I know of that is fully paved over. And it just feels like a hugely lost opportunity to develop the kind of gem that Councillor Farrell was talking about. A gem that drives business, that drives economic development. And we've seen this all over the country. Post Office Square was mentioned. There's another park in Pittsburgh called Schenley Plaza that was converted, 280 spots removed, and a very active green with great programming was put there. That has been an engine for economic development and community development. The report that Dr. Popper just mentioned and that Mr. Lemel passed around and referenced today, in fact, it was designed, the scope was purely about business. It was not about what the green could be used for or what other alternative opportunities there might be. And so in that way, it was purely focused on parking. What I found kind of astounding in the graphs that Mr. Lemel showed earlier was there's very little congested parking. There are a few peak times during the day and maybe some other days, Valentine's Day, for example. But in what we're saying here is that we're willing to limit public space for creative, community-based opportunities so that at a few crunch times, people don't have to look for other spaces or wait for spaces or walk 3 minutes. Seems like a not really good trade-off for the opportunities that we might have. And I'd love to get in this process way more voices than the business voices. Critically important. I use the businesses in Newton Center. Love that they're here. They thrive. It's great. But there ought to be, where are families in these conversations? That's all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We have.
Can't hear your dinging.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
Can anybody hear it? No. All right. I'm gonna have to get a better buzzer for next time. In that case, I'm gonna have to start being rude and interrupting people. I apologize. It's my least favorite thing to do, but the hour is late and we do need to try to give everybody an opportunity to speak. Angela, followed by Annie Weiss. Angela?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you just state your name and
Sure.
address?
Angela Siciliano. I live at 61 Pelham Street in Newton Center. And thank you all. It's been a elucidating presentation by all. I'm very happy that the businesses were consulted. I think they should have been consulted from the get-go. We'll just leave it with the layout was not well done. But while they did indeed get the benefit of a call, nobody in the neighborhood has. We are the residential zone people. I was here when we got together and got that. There were reasons why that was granted to us back then. Had to do with simple things. To quote my neighbor who's on vacation, time-limited street parking was in effect back then, but as we soon discovered, the limit was unenforced and habitually violated. After numerous experiences of being trapped for hours in our own driveway by carelessly or illegally parked cars, we signed on to the petition, which was eventually successful. I would also point out, because you are the Safety Commission, and yes, I will deal with this next week, people speed down Pelham Street. The sight lines on Pelham Street and pulling out of one's driveway are impossible. It is very difficult to leave the driveway when anybody is parked, even my neighbor's car. The neighbors try to accommodate one another by not parking their cars out there all day because it is a difficult thing. My neighbor had his rearview mirror just knocked off. He parked his car there. It was knocked off. It was on the ground. Nobody left a note. My neighbor had his dog killed on Pelham Street by speed. The house at the end of the street, Crescent Street, had to rearrange where her wall was because so many times cars had slid on the ice. As far as the pilot program goes, it occurs to me you're not going to be doing this during the winter, and I invite you to come out and look at Pelham Street today and see how safe you think a narrow street, which now would be even narrow because of the snow.
Angela, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. That's
Is
the
that it?
intent.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Annie Weiss, followed by Mary Lee Belleville.
Hi, thank you so much for all this great work. I was also on the call this morning, and I'm first of all a huge proponent of this plan. I'm a bigger proponent of the earlier plan. I think that I share the visions of more transformation. And I am a small business owner on Langley Road in Newton Center. I have dozens of clients a day coming into my office. I'm also live right outside of Newton Center, and I'm also a mom here. I was very heartened this morning. A couple of things I don't got mentioned had to do with, doing some things to support the business owners, like identifying employees that are using spots right on Union Street, Beacon Street, et cetera, that could be used for customers, maybe with shorter durations, things like that, to support some of the concerns of the business owners. But I just want to emphasize that we're talking about a lifestyle, a community that's a draw, and that's going to support everybody. And, Ms. Patterson, I heard your concerns about your kids and the traffic, and I do hope they'll take you seriously with speed bumps and signage. And I also can say, as a mother of older kids here, that I think the kinds of things that are going to be potentially offered, will be of such benefit to kids in this community, such a safe, wholesome place for people to congregate or do athletic things or cultural things. And I think there's so many examples of places where that has enhanced not only community life, but foot traffic and business. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm in favor. And I want to echo what somebody else said too about, there's a lot of input from business owners on these issues, and they're much easier to corral. It's much easier to survey them, get their, send an email blast to all the tenants of my building, et cetera, and get opposition. I think it's a lot harder to tap feelings about what this could create. Thank you.
2 minutes on the nose. Thank you. Mary Lee Belleville, then Lisa Gordon.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Perfect. When I sat in the Newton Center parking lot 16 years ago, waiting to attend an open house for the condo I eventually bought, I thought how disappointing it was that the Newton Center parking lot was that. There's no village center green. It's quite a loss for Newton and Newton Center. I totally concur with Stephen Farrell and those who have agreed with him that we need to be thinking bigger and not poking around the edges. When I have spoken publicly about what my vision was for Newton Center, it was all about envisioning what Post Office Square became. So I think we should be thinking bigger, but I also think we should be concerned about the impact if we have these incremental changes. I worry about Dalton Street, Pelham Street, Pleasant Street. I don't think we should be redirecting parking to our neighborhoods. I think we should have a big vision. I think we should be looking more long-term and not looking at a pilot that pokes around the edges. And so I hope we can embrace a bigger vision for Newton Center. Thanks.
Thank you. Lisa Gordon, followed by Lucy Chansky.
Hi, thank you so much, Chair Grossman, and thank you to the department. I think this is a exciting and wonderful vision. I think Newton Center has needed some love for quite a while. But I do think that the voices of the businesses and the residents, and in particular the residents, are getting a little lost in the discussion. I want to hit on that in a moment, but first I'd also just make a plea, since this is temporary, that we do look at what we can do on the grass, not just on this paved area, because there are a lot of paths in between there. My husband is the piano guy. He's out there all summer long. We spend a lot of time on Newton Center Green. And there's definitely access for people who are rolling in that area. And it would be great if we could put some thought into how to use those paths, because it's true. Someone talked about the picnic tables. They're not sufficient. They're not comfortable. There aren't enough. And there are trees, but there's really no shade. And so I would really love to see if we're something that is more permanent in that area, rather than just, you know, this disposable culture that we have, where we're going to put things in here, maybe they aren't going to stay. I would love to see some of this be committed to the green part that families and people can use. So I would urge you to do that. I would also urge you to, if you're going to repave the parking lot, when we were in the task force, which Maria brought up, we talked about landscaping around the parking lot. And I think it would be a fabulous opportunity to actually shield what is left of the parking lot until we get to Stephen's vision, so that that is not what we're all looking at. There's absolutely no need for that. We fought to get the chain link fence down. We could definitely put up landscaping. Lastly, I just want to say that the residents' voice in particular is being lost. In your, whether we have success, you had a lot of stakeholders in there, but there was nothing for residents. I know my time is up, so I overtalked, but I would urge you, because the residents who do have parking restrictions fought for those, and I think we should be a little more thoughtful about when we take those away. Thanks. Sorry, Becky.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Gordon. Lucy Chansky. And at this time, that's the last hand that I see. So if anybody else wishes to comment, this would be the time to raise your hand. Go ahead.
I can see some positives in the plan. I'm also very excited about the increased accessibility that will happen with the project, but Newton Center has huge amounts of traffic. The traffic is unbearable, difficult to get through, and by creating an attraction for so many more cars, the traffic will just increase. And I wonder what the plans are to help with the traffic, because this, if it's a success, it will bring more and more people. So I think there needs to be some kind of thought about how to get traffic through. Beacon Street at certain times is impassable. Center Street takes a long time to get through. So hopefully somebody will pay attention to what to do with traffic. Thank you. And I forgot to give my address, 259 Jackson Street, Newton Center. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I really want to thank all the members of the public who came tonight, those of you who spoke and those of you who came and just observed. It's really wonderful to have your feedback and engagement, and we really appreciate the time that you spent with our committee tonight, reviewing this, learning more about the project, and offering your feedback. And if you do have further feedback, the email address that Ms. Delaney provided is certainly appropriate for all of the street and parking concerns. You're also always free to email your counselors or the mayor's team as well. And all of our information is all on the website. But if anybody has any questions, you can just call City Hall and ask how to email any of us. Okay, let me just turn to Mr. Lamel, Mr. Heath, Mr. Perez Demarisi, Mr. Codd. Anything you'd like to say or react to anything you heard?
No, this has been very enlightening for us, I think.
Okay, thank you. And counselors, any further questions or comments? We do have a motion on the table to hold from Counselor Lucas. Okay, seeing none. We're going to take a vote on Counselor Lucas's motion among the members of PSNT. All those in favor of hold, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we have a unanimous vote to hold. That concludes our business tonight. Thank you all again. I know the hour is late. I thought it was a really excellent discussion on two really important topics. Thank you and have a great night.